Welcome to the May 24th, 2022 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools. I would like to call this meeting to order. It is too often in our community and in our country in which tragedy strikes. Children should feel safe when they leave home. School is the safest place for our students at this time in their lives. And it becomes a tragedy when you walk out your front door, you go to school, but you don't return. Today, in one of our states, state of Texas, 14 students will not return home, and one teacher will not return home. And that is a tragedy, because one thing that we do up here on the diocese as board members is we want to ensure our students are safe when they go to school. I'd like to take a moment of silence in honor of those students and those families that are now dealing with this tragedy, in honor of them who should not have to suffer like this. Thank you, everyone. I would like to present our land acknowledgement for this evening. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast, Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community. Thank you. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move to roll call. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Lassane?
Present.
Vice President Mitchell?
Present.
Director Nichols?
Present.
Director Mason?
Present.
Director Berg?
Present.
Student Representative Pilch-Basson?
Present.
Student Representative Colley?
Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you mind introducing the agenda for this evening?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board Directors, and the public this evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following: a segment for recognitions, the superintendent's report, a segment for board comments, a segment for public comments, a segment for routine business, segment for information discussion, segment for new business, segment for upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following changes were made to the agenda. Item 8.01, the superintendent's report, the presentation was added. Item 10.02, approval of the personnel report. The report was updated. Item 10.06, approval of the Everett Public Schools and Everett Coaches Extracurricular Associations Collective Bargaining Agreement. A new line of language is added. And item 10.07, approval of the interlocal cooperative agreement with Washington State Department of Social Health Services for the Home Care Aid Course State Curriculum. The fiscal impact was updated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salzman. Is there a motion for adoption of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Mitchell to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed now to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Thank you very much. We'll now move to section 6.0, which is recognition. And I have the honor of introducing Ms. Melanie West, who will introduce the Jackson High School Chamber Orchestra.
Thank you so much for having us. It is an honor to be here. On behalf of all of the performing arts teachers in Everett Public Schools, I want to thank you for your support and continued support over these many years, and especially in recent years with all the many challenges that we had. I want to also mention that from Jackson, we had about 40 students just recently perform at State Solo Ensemble, and they did very well. A soprano from the choir got first place in state, and a pianist who is an orchestra student got third place in state, and many others performed very well. So these particular students qualified as alternates to state, which is a huge accomplishment for 3 sophomores in chamber orchestra. They're known as the lunch ladies. The reason they chose this name is because they practice literally every day at lunch. They do not miss a day, and that is why they are so successful. Alice Fu, Sadie Kwastnikoff, and Sophia Tuft, again, all sophomores, they will play first Trio number 2 in B flat by Percy Hilder Miles, and then the second movement of Miniatures by Dvorak. Thank you.
would like to let's give them one more hand.
I know.
Thank you so much. You honor us. You truly honor us. You know, one thing I can truly say about music, it gives that brain a boost of energy. And it's really shown that that boost will cause your memory to heighten. It will cause you to increase your problem-solving ability. It will improve your creativity. So music is very vital. And I thank you so much for presenting tonight. It's an honor. It is truly an honor. And I am glad we will continue this program throughout all of our schools. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Gosh, it's so nice to have kids come. Our next item is the superintendent's report. Dr. Saltzman, would you like to give the superintendent's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public. First of all, thank you to Director Melanie West and to the students. You brought great joy tonight when we need it most. I'd like to also send my prayers to the community of Uvalde, Texas today. Tragedy that took place in our country, and my prayers to that entire community this evening. Also, this is the first time that I was able to speak to the public since the tragedy in Buffalo, New York. And that was a tragedy of violence in our country. And when I go around our schools and I see the word kind and being kind, let's remember that. We are all, and kindness matters. And I see that in many of our schools. Let's continue to be the model community that we are. And again, my prayers to the entire community in Buffalo and to the United States of America. I'd like to take this time to congratulate our Everett PTSA Council. I don't know if you were aware, but over the weekend, they were named the Washington State PTA Council of the Year. And I want to congratulate them for their great work. Great work. We had a turnout at our community resource fair last Thursday at the CRC. And if you don't know, it was not only a great turnout, but there were 30 booths that were offering all kinds of services. And our students got to sit in a helicopter and learn about search and rescue as well. And I know they really enjoyed that. Good luck to our student athletes as they head to state competition. Cascade Bruins are the 3A district champions. And the Jackson High School Timberwolves softball team are going to the state for the 6th year in a row. But to all our high schools that partake in extracurricular activities, thank you and for the great work that you all are doing. And then our Everett Robotics Extravaganza at North Middle School was a huge success. I feel like lately I've been on the robotics tour, and several of our elementary schools attended the robotics showcase, which made me very proud. And they enjoyed competing with other schools. So congratulations to them. And then who's counting? But in 17 school days, we're going to have commencement, the crown jewel of public education. And to our entire school community, that is a celebration and a great distinguished honor to our youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saltzman. We'll now move to section 8.0, which is board comments. The purpose of board comments is to share what directors and representatives have encountered through their work in the district, in schools, and in the community as it pertains to the board work. Comments should be kept brief and hopefully not share too much personal information. Who would like to start with board comments? Directors.
Start.
Oh, yes.
I might not be very brief. I want to begin just by saying we did, Pam and I attended our closing audit. It was a clean audit. We had no concerns or incidents of financial noncompliance, no material misstatements. They went on and on and on with the praise, but that's the key points that I wrote down. I would now like to correct an article last week that I read in the Everett Herald. As a school director, I am paid. It's not much, and many days it's less than minimum wage. We don't get paid for everything, but I am paid for tonight's meeting, school visits, any trainings, state meetings, national meetings, and the best day, which was previously mentioned, of graduation, as well as the other celebrations. Not paid for everything, so some of it is volunteer. And I just want to say this is honestly the best job I have, is I get to support the students, teachers, and staff of the best district in the world. I just had to add the world today. But in terms of what I can bring back to this district, though, I do attend a lot of D&I sessions, diversity and inclusion sessions, and I did one for a local hospital that was looking at how to expand their resident recruitment for their programs. One thing I learned is they have a rubric where they do give 1 point for students who are from a disproportionate background. So there's a lot of Korean and Chinese who are providers, but not as many Thai, Filipino. They gave some examples, Hispanic, and so they do get 1 point. But then they said that everyone can get that 1 point based on their lived experiences. So if you stood up for a diverse community, if somehow maybe it isn't your color of your skin that offers something, that everybody is eligible for that 1 point. So it's not just for people of color. But then the thing that I wanted to bring back to this district is that they lamented about their pipeline, that they quote unquote can't control what comes from medical school. But I was thinking we do control what goes into medical school. As we have our AP classes, as we make sure that high school diploma gets them into their first job, into their first career. And I say that first career because while lots of kids do know young that they want to become a physician, I know a number of physicians who it is a second career. Engineers who became physicians, pilots who became physicians. I could name a lot of second careers. So it is just sort of, we have a very diverse student core here. We are teaching them a lot about helping other students and their shared experiences. And for those that want to become physicians, either in 4 years or in 8 or 10 years, they're looking for you. So that's just what I want to add to our students in our schools. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Mitchell. Director Nichols, would you like to make a comment?
I didn't have anything prepared for tonight, but I did just want to thank again the orchestra that was here, and I'm looking forward to graduations. I'm looking forward to welcoming a new student representative, and sometimes it's easy to, especially with everything happening, easy to kind of get bogged down and feel like things are a little bit out of control. And it's just important to remember that the only things in this life that we actually have control over is ourselves, and even then it's not it's not guaranteed. So give yourself some grace, especially during complex times like these, and only worry about what you can actually control and not what you can't.
Director Mason.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment. It's actually kind of a combination of what Director Mitchell and Director Nichols said, because we are coming into what I like to refer to as our celebration season. So as we wind down the school year, we have so many opportunities to celebrate so much happening in the district. We have academics with the Superintendent Scholar Awards. We have the art shows here at the CRC. We have athletics. We have teams going to district and state, some of them even beyond. We have clubs and robotics happening, competitions, and then, of course, graduation, which is, as Dr. Salzman said, what we look forward to at the end of the year here. It's a busy time of year, but it's really the best time of year. And I just want to thank everyone. Oh, and I mentioned also, I forgot to mention, we have our retirement celebration for those who have given so much to our district over their careers and time in our schools. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for the hard work. And I just feel so fortunate to be able to celebrate alongside all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Berg, would you have any comments?
I just want to quickly thank Mr. Truitt and Mr. Herber for having me in their class yesterday at Jackson. I was able to talk with an AP, 2 AP government classes and a human geography class, and it was really, I really honor it when teachers ask me to come into the classroom and speak and talk about the different roles that I play, especially my role here, especially since I'm not an employee of the Everett Public Schools and sitting here as a director. in this form and format, it's really special when we're able to come in and interact with students in that way with the teachers, because not being employees, we always have to be supervised. So it's always great to talk with students, talk with them about government, how it functions, how it works, and the different roles that we play. Thank you.
We'll now move to student rep Tara Prasant.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go right ahead.
I just have a couple things to share. The first one, I want to start out just apologizing. I wasn't at the last board meeting, and I want to kind of use that as a way to remind people. The reason I wasn't at the last board meeting is because I had COVID-19. So just a reminder, that's still going around, and it's important to keep taking the precautions that make sense for you and your families. It definitely did not go away, and so like my entire family has gotten it in the last month, just kind of staggered, and it sucks when that happens. We're all just totally fine now, but yeah, if that's what you need to hear to keep taking precautions, then take that to heart. At Jackson, for the last month or so, students have been working really hard with exams, both the AP exams for the first 2 weeks of May, and the SBA has been happening this week. So I think it is definitely a time for like celebration and the end of the year, but high school students work really hard this time of year because a lot of our exams fall right up at the end of the year. So it's like really a final push. I only had 2 exams this year, but there are a lot of students that take a lot more than that, and then also have to take the SBA and had to take the SAT back in March and all of that. So I just want to congratulate students for almost being done with that. I think our last SBA is on this Thursday. And then I kind of wanted to echo what April Berg said. I was not in the class that she was visiting, unfortunately, but it was after lunch. It was Director and Representative Berg who was visiting the classes. Before lunch, it was the county council members, Jared Mead and Nate Narig. So that was who I heard from in my classes, and that was a really special experience to get to hear from community leaders about, like, I think local government. I think that's also applicable to this body, but when the national government is not looking so attractive, it can be really nice to hear from local politicians about like what local politics is more like, because I think it's a lot more civil, and it can be really interesting sometimes. And then I also just wanted to say this will be my last board meeting as a student representative. I'll be coming back at the end of June, I think for a kind of like recognition situation, but I'll be out of town for the meeting on the 14th, so, and that's the last meeting before I graduate. So this is my last time serving in this role. It's been really special to have this position during COVID-19. I think it's been really eye-opening and educational for me, because knowing what the district is doing and how the operations work in a time of crisis has been a big source of comfort for me. And then I can share that information with my peers and kind of like give them more of an idea of what's going on and share their feedback. So I think especially during this time, it's been a really big honor and really important and special to serve in this role. Yeah, I've been a 13-year student in the district, so my whole life, basically what I've known is Everett Public Schools. So it's been hard, I think, as a senior during this time to not imagine what high school could have been like. But I think the last few weeks, I've just been really grateful for what high school was like for me. So that's been really special.
May I take a point of order really quick? I just want to recognize how important our student reps are to the board, because while we are sitting up here making decisions, they are actually living the decisions just like all of our staff. And so a couple weeks ago, when we adopted the AP stats class, Tara actually was in the class trialing the book. So actually getting firsthand information from the students about what's actually happening has been essential. And I just want to say thank you, because your voices are so important to us.
Well, I do want to say thank you, and I'm sorry that you won't be here at the next meeting, but I do understand that, you know, you have served us very well, and I do appreciate the fact that, you know, you've been here. I've really valued your comments, I've valued your perspective, and I'm looking forward to hearing so much about your life in the future and the accomplishments that you will achieve. So I thank you so much, and you've been a true asset for our board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tara, we are bringing you back in June. You do know that, right?
Yes, yeah, I said that. I said that at the beginning, but
And there'll be a lot more statements made about you.
Just
Exactly.
in this role, it's my last time, so I wanted to say
know.
that.
I do want to say also congratulations to the Everett PTSA of the Year. That's an accomplishment. Can you imagine that? That is truly wonderful. And I would also like to say that I attended, Director Mitchell mentioned the district's audit exit conference, and I attended that as well. And true, I can report that there are no findings during this particular audit, or has been, audit, accountability audit, but I would like to take the time to thank some of the people who were very much involved with that. They had to do a lot of things over Zoom, spend a lot of hours researching and going through files and records, et cetera, But I would like to thank district staff, Andy Tess, Aaron Davis, Ruth Floyd, Gayla Jenner, Sarah Yeckley, Adam Panzer, and then Linda Briggs, for their work coordinating and working alongside our state auditors. Please let them know, Mr. Moore, that we thank them and you for the time that you take in ensuring that our public resources are spent wisely and well. Thank you. I also want to thank the Jackson High School Chamber Orchestra. You know, in these tragic times and challenging times, music kind of relaxes your mind and relaxes your muscles. And it makes you feel soothed, and it can take away a lot of the stress that we have to encounter every day. And I wish that it wasn't that way, i.e. we didn't have as much stress, but that's one thing that music can do. So please take the time to tell your kids that you love them, and make sure when they leave your house every day that you love them. Make sure you tell them that. Thank you. We'll now move to section 9.01. And the board specifically sets this time aside because we want to hear from our constituents. We value public input, and we want to hear and understand the perspectives that you bring. The public comment parts of the agenda is for us to listen to what you have to say. It's not for debate, and it's not for discussion. Board members will not respond to individual comments. So with that being said, we have 3 speakers that have signed up for today's meeting. The first 2 speakers will be in person, and then we do have 1 public speaker that is online. After the in-person speakers speak, I will introduce our guest speaker that's online. But first, we will call to the lectern Michaela Lim. And Dr. Saltzman, would you introduce what they need to do?
I believe the speaker is the importance of an athletic trainer at Everett High School. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Michaela Lim. Okay, you will have 3 minutes to speak. The lights will come on indicating the time that you have. The green light will allow you the time to speak in that 3 minutes. The yellow light will tell you you're getting close. And at the red light, that will be at the time at which you need to close your comments up. Okay? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I have come to speak to you as a student athlete and next year's ASB president at Everett High School. Standing alongside me, I have my fellow student athletes, and I am here to speak for them and for their voices to be heard. We need an athletic trainer at our high school. I have been a sports med student for 3 years, and I am a sports med intern at Cascade with their athletic trainer, and I know the importance of having an athletic trainer present for evaluation of mechanism of injury and on-site medical aid in an emergency. None of this we have, and in many cases, it has been extremely dangerous and detrimental to our student athletes. I myself experienced a concussion last fall during my soccer season. I had to see a doctor to get evaluated, which cost my family money when I could have been checked out at the site when my injury occurred. In addition, I had no rehab plan and no way of recovering fully, considering I had no guidance in my recovery. Many other athletes at our school have similar stories. Volleyball player Maggie Chadwick tore 2 ligaments in her ankle, and when she saw a doctor for an evaluation, quote, "The doctor was surprised that we did not have a trainer and was actually concerned about our sports programs and what happens to athletes when they get hurt or need an injury wrapped or ice." Sam Strange landed on their head after being plowed down by another player. Sam said, quote, "After I hit my head, I was wandering around really out of it and puking and not really knowing where I was or what was happening, and I didn't get any help until after the game at a hospital. And if there was a trainer there, they could have helped me right away and I wouldn't have been as scared." I'll read a couple more quotes from testimonies. Taylor Millar, "Before every game and practice, I would have to drive myself to the nearest physical therapy just to get my ankle taped and then head back to school. It was very inconvenient and unnecessary for me and anyone hurt on the team to have to drive and get PT assistance just for tape." Brittany Lemke, "It's been 2 years and we are struggling in every sport because we are lacking the treatment we're supposed to have." Emma Murphy, "Midway through the season, I was hit in the head at practice. I was unable to drive or focus. My head was pounding and I was incredibly light and sound sensitive. I had a concussion. My coach had to call my mom, and luckily we were close friends with the Meadowdale athletic trainer. I was able to see him for a return to play plan. I had to drive all the way from Everett to Linwood just for a concussion because we did not have a trainer on site, or at all for that matter." You will see many other words from our student athletes and coaches on the testimony page I have provided. Please take a look at the sheet. I got signed by numerous individuals, approximately 90 from my school, who couldn't be here tonight but wanted to show their support for this issue. Now, there are 20 people standing behind me who are also in support of me. And now, on behalf of all of Everett High School, I ask that you prioritize the equity among all Everett Public Schools high schools and provide an athletic trainer for us, since all other high schools have one. And above all, the students here standing with me, and even the ones who cannot make it, would like you to consider the safety of our student athletes and find us an athletic trainer. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much, Michaela. I do understand that Mr. Moore and Ms. Mundell will be getting right back to you with some comments. We'll now move to our second in-house speaker, and that is Ms. Jody Moyer from the EAEOP. EAEOP. I'm sorry.
Got it.
Again, the green light will indicate you have 3 minutes.
Where's the green light at? Like,
Right in front, on the lectern, right at the
right
top.
here? Yeah, okay.
Yes. The yellow light will indicate your time is coming to a close.
Okay.
And the red light will indicate that you need to close up your comments. Thank you.
okay. Good evening. My name is Jody Moyer. I work here at the CRC. I'm an office professional. I have worked for Everett School District serving our students and families for 32 years. My coworkers and I are currently in contract negotiations over our wages, benefits, and working conditions. I thank you for this time to speak directly with you, as you have the power to determine the health of our workplace and our families' livelihoods. While you know everything I'm about to say, this is a public forum so that you and our community understand who we are and what we do daily in our facilities, resource center, transportation department, and our nearly 30 elementary, middle, and high schools. We are your office professionals. You depend on us to understand kaleidoscope of software programs and various governmental and agency tracking procedures. We provide value to you and the community you were elected by. The work of our membership is what ensures everyone's benefits are provided and that payroll goes out on time. Without us, our school supports don't happen. If our students' attendance isn't tracked properly, funding for our students faculty and staff would be in jeopardy. All of us, nearly 200 office assistants, accounting, benefits, and communication technicians, data and program coordinators, office support staff for Register, ASB, and many, many more want to feel respected. We are negotiating a paycheck that will provide us the financial ability to support our kids as they pursue higher education. We are proud of our work. We love what we do. We want our students and their families and our district to succeed. Please hear us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moyer. Our next speaker will be online tonight. Jared, would you please promote Jeff Heckathorn to the panelists so they can join us via Zoom?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. In your recent school board meetings, including May 10th, no administrator has said a word about the courageous Everett School District high school students who took AP national exams earlier this month. So I would like to. Over 1,000 of your high school students took over 2,000 AP exams in 25 subjects this season. So a substantial number of students took multiple college level, challenging, stressful exams. Over 300 of those exams were subsidized by taxpayers. 8 students from Sequoia each took one of these difficult 2 to 3 hour exams. That is all reason to celebrate. This may be the first time some of these students will be graded fairly and objectively. Being a teacher's pet won't help. Being a teacher's bane won't hurt. Their Everett teachers will not grade these exams. For historical perspective, back in 2001, few Everett students even heard about AP, let alone the level of academic scholarship and disciplined study skills needed for AP level coursework. Jackson High School was particularly underperforming at that time. Jackson High School students with their inflated 4.0 grade point averages and high self-esteem marched off to UW only to learn what grading on a curve is in college and the buzzsaw that was and is the Bellevue School District student. Many Jackson High School students had to either drop out of the competitive majors they so desired. They were unprepared. I worry that you as a group are thinking like a group. You may be falling for the latest fad, grading for equity, without questioning all its tenets. I could describe many fads that have come and gone over the last 2 decades that the quote, experts sitting in on this meeting persuaded board members at the time to accept as gospel. Lastly, I understand the most independent thinking, most respected person on this board has chosen to resign. My hope is that you appoint another person in that vein. Thank you, and thank you, Director Berg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heckathorn. I would ask that you now return to the attendee status. Thank you, and you can continue viewing the rest of the meeting. Thank you. We'll now move to the next item on our agenda, and that is the consent agenda. Dr. Salzman, would you like to provide an introduction to our consent agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board Directors, and to the public this evening. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items, such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts, grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received no questions regarding the consent agenda. The consent agenda is presented as published for board approval. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Dr. Salzman. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Nichols to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda place it in new business of this agenda. Hearing no request, we'll now proceed to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The motion carries. We will now move on to section 11.0. 11.0 is strategic monitoring progress, and that there will be no strategic progress monitoring reports for this meeting. So we'll now move to the next item, which is item 12.0, which is information and discussion. During this section of the agenda, the board directors will hold a discussion related to the length of directors' elected terms. At several recent meetings in August of this past year, as well as in April of this year, we had a special board meeting where the topic was discussed. This discussion is scheduled for a total of 20 minutes. The presentation will be 2 minutes by Director Berg, and discussion will follow, allowing each board member 2 minutes to talk, then moving to the next. At the conclusion of the first round, clarifying comments will be allowed for 1 minute for each director. If the decision is made to move this item to the next phase, which is review of policies and procedures and the formation of a resolution, which will still require further review and approval in the same manner in which policies currently are developed by the board are taken, a vote will be taken to do so. We will now begin with Director Berg.
Thank you, President Lassane. And I'm bringing this before you with colleagues. I believe we've had a brief discussion about this at our August planning. I am prayerfully and hoping, fingers and toes crossed, that as a group we can agree to move our director terms from 6 years to 4 years. Part of why I've brought that before this body is I believe the geographic and economic diversity of our district, going from North Everett to past Mill Creek down to basically Bothell, it really is stifling to have 6-year terms and not have director districts. And I think after the August meeting, it seemed as though there was more appetite to go down to potentially 4-year terms. I say this because historically we've had a lot of appointments, and I respectfully, I know that I'm maybe a bit hypocritical in that, but it tends to be an appointment process that then becomes a retention situation. And sometimes as a community, it's felt that there aren't enough avenues into the electoral process that puts us in these places. One of the things when I decided to run for this position that I heard loud and clear from many people in the community was that they felt that our board was not accessible enough to the community via traditional election process because of our 6-year terms. We are a bit of an outlier. Tacoma and Spokane also have 6-year terms, but that's only 3 districts, including ourselves, out of 295 districts statewide that have a 6-year term. The only other elected office, there's fire commissioners in various districts, water commissioners as well. But to have a $500 million budget, the amount of trust that the public has placed in us, both with their the treasure of their children as well as the treasure of their dollars, I just feel they deserve the right to vote us in and vote us out every 4 years, like many other elected officials in similar positions. So I'm hoping that we can have a robust discussion about that. I'm hoping that that we can get to a point of passing a resolution to change that so that we can have more input, again, for our large, growing, economically, as well as geographically diverse district.
Thank you very much. I forgot to let everybody know too, I was just going to be keeping a time on it so that we can get through this discussion. So thank you very much. You were well within your 2 minutes. You must have practiced that.
Thank you.
I would like to ask if there is a director who would like to go next. Surely, go right ahead.
this is something that Director Berg and I have talked about on several occasions, and I feel two ways about it, right? Because the 6-year term is nice for the district in that it provides stability of leadership, consistency, things like that. But it also has its downsides in that, you know, just itself being a 6-year term, we may be dissuading lots of working folks from even throwing their hat in to run because it is such a big time commitment and a long time commitment. And, you know, not to restate what Director Berg has already said, one of the best things about our country is your right to redress of government. And so providing our voters more of a voice to do that, to make sure that we are doing our jobs appropriately, I think is a positive. It's a net positive for our district, and it's a net positive for the board. So on the whole, I'm supportive of 4-year terms, but I get the kind of ambivalence, the feeling, the two ways that go along with this topic. The other thing I would like to just put out there is I would really like, and I'm sure the other directors would really like, more public input directed at us on this topic. So people of the community, please reach out to us either individually as directors or to the director, the board email, and let us know your thoughts. What would you prefer? Would you prefer 4 years or 6 years?
I appreciate that last ask of the community, because we are here to serve the community. And I wanted to start out by saying how thankful the students are that here get to see a discussion. So really, I did stand up I was in an appointed position, then I did choose to serve 6 years, and now I ran again for 6 years. I read a book a long time ago, which was based on information from Florida State University, that 10,000 hours is really what it takes to master the work. And so the fact that we don't do this full time, but really we do live it full time, that 6 years, I mean, it really was at 5 years that I felt very competent. And that even with 4-year terms, I appreciate the fact that more people want to run. At 6 years, we give the opportunity for 1 to 2 people to run for office, depending on what's open. But in the county and the districts we compare ourselves to, there were 4 total unopposed positions. Meaning that I just wonder where the people are that are clamoring to sign up even for those 4-year positions. Then the other thing is that with ours, we get to keep that consistency. We just decided on a strategic plan, and there were a few districts in the area that had their majorities flip. And so that really can change the tenor of the district and the importance of that. And just to the last point, that no one can predict the future, that life changes. And we have had people before us whose life have changed. I appreciate, April, your life is changing. I mean, life changes with a 4-year term, with a 6-year term. Life does change, and we have a process for that. And so I do sort of want to stick with 6 years. I mean, we're not voting, but that's really where I'm leaning. But I would like to hear from the community too.
Very much, Director Mitchell. Director Mason, would you like to provide any comments?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to start by just providing a little bit of background for the public to understand sort of where we are and where we've been on this transition in terms of 6 years. So in the past 10 years, there have been 4 vacancies and only 2 newly elected directors, meaning that we had to fill 4 vacancies. 3 of those were prior to serving 4 years, including Director Berg's resignation on tonight's consent agenda. And I would also like to point out that Director Nichols won an election against an incumbent that was appointed to the board, so it does happen. I reached out to the 2 other districts who have 6-year terms, both Tacoma and Spokane, to understand if they had similar discussions, and I got responses from both of them, both their board chairs. A quote from Director Weiser of Spokane. They too have contemplated a similar discussion, although it never made it onto a meeting agenda. And his quote was, "The comment that seems to resonate was that in 6-year term offers the chance to ramp up as a new board member and then have a productive 4 to 5 years without distraction of politics or an election. So very much in line to what Director Mitchell said. Given the intensity of board service, most seem to be planning for a single term of late. In Tacoma, due to a variety of circumstances, since 2018, they have had 3 seats vacated midterm. And as a result of the 5 directors, the longest serving board member right now is someone who has just served over 4 years. So again, the turnover of these positions is a pretty significant reality. I have gone both ways on this topic as well, kind of back and forth. And I think prior to COVID and the increasing political polarization in our country, I always believed that a 4-year term made sense, if nothing else than to simply be consistent with other Washington school districts. Now, as I read about insurrections at school board meetings across our country.
At 2 minutes, you can still come back.
Okay, thank you.
When we have clarifying.
Okay.
This allows every director to have an
Thank you.
opportunity to speak. But I will get back to you.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I'd like to provide a couple of comments, if I may. There are many advantages to 6-year terms. Our board members serve a staggered 6-year term. So it's staggered. No one turns over all at the same time, and that's the advantages of a 6-year term. It allows for balance and continuity, and it allows for consistency. The first year I sat on the board, I didn't talk much. I learned a lot. By year 3 and 4, I could say that I acquired institutional knowledge, so to speak, an understanding of the district and how to be a good board member. But the big point is the board needs to build cohesion and collaborative relationship among each board member. And when you have a turnover where they serve just 4 and then they leave, you have a new board member coming in and trying to build that relationship, and that collaborativeness becomes a problem in some respects when you have a turnover every 4 years. What we've been able to accomplish in Everett Public Schools, one of the highest graduation rates, fantastic support, greater focus on STEM in 21st century, has been beneficial for our students and our community because we haven't had that large of a turnover from 4 to 6, that turnover. We've been able to focus in on that and ensure that we kept our focus on student achievement in order to receive that. I'm getting 21 seconds right now, so I will probably yield now to allow for the more clarifying comments for our board directors for the next round. So, Director Berg, would you like any clarifying time?
Yeah, I would. And I'll just be frank, one of the fears that I have with the current structure, because we don't have director districts, so many school districts have areas that they serve. So if you live in a particular area, then, it's cut up into maybe quadrants, maybe 5 ways where you have to live in a certain area in order to run for the board. That way, everybody's represented. The way we're currently structured, we don't have that. So you could have potentially all 5 of us living on the same cul-de-sac with 6-year terms. And those 2 factors to me are incredibly stifling, being just a student of democracy. And we have the income diversity of our district leads me to believe that although it's not the case, that there is a very real potential that where you see we have a diversity from 55,000 average annual income all the way up to the high 90s in parts of our district. And as that grows, that disparity grows, we have the potential to have many of our directors, because a lot of these seats, they do cost money when we run, coming from the same area, and nothing to preclude that.
I have a point of order. Are we not to focus just on the 4-year term? I appreciate your comments about districts, but I believe this discussion point is just the 4-year terms.
And that's okay. My point, just to clarify, was about just democracy. And so how, if we don't have 4-year terms and we don't have director districts, that this is very hampering to our voters, our constituents, and the folks that we serve.
Mm-hmm. I see. Clarifying, Director Mason, I'm gonna start at your end.
Okay.
You wanted to go for, you had some comments and I had to cut you off.
I did, that's fine. It's an interesting thing because I think districting is actually we have been very fortunate as a board here because we have naturally kind of district, at least in my time on the board. And from what I recall previously, it's been a mix. And so I think that's maybe another opportunity or discussion to have in the future. In terms of 4 to 6 year terms, I guess where I was headed is I was just looking at the politicizing of school board meetings and the polarization politically in our country. And I just really struggle with, I lean towards consistency on a board rather than more turnover, because right now there are so many topics and conversations that are being brought to school boards that are actually not even district related. And I believe that having individuals on a school board who are committed to the success of our
I'll yield
students
my time to her.
and support our families is a much greater priority to me.
Director Mitchell, yield her time
Yeah.
to you if you wish to continue.
I think I've said all I need to say.
Okay.
Her alarm went off and I liked what you were saying.
Director Nichols.
So, I understand a lot of the benefits that go to a 6-year term. However, a lot of the benefits that were, political polarization, all those types of things, with a 6-year term, you're not reducing that risk because it can just be locked into a fiefdom. We've got board members that have to resign after 3 or 4 years because they can't do a 6-year term, and then we have appointments come in, and it's too easy for us to appoint who we want as opposed to who the community wants, and to keep those people in power. And yes, I did beat an incumbent, but only by like 25 votes. So, it happens rarely that an incumbent doesn't win. So I really do think you're going to be able to build cohesion within 4 years. You should be able to if you're an effective board and an effective leader. So that shouldn't be an issue. And then it gives people the opportunity. To decide if they want to add another 4 years as opposed to committing to 6 years right away. Like it's a big ask of a lot of people, and I think we're doing ourselves a disservice by not having 4 year
Thank you
terms.
very much, Director Nichols. At this point in time, I have nothing more to add to as clarifying in my position. I do prefer the 6 years. I'll resume the time. I do prefer the 6 years because it does provide stability on the board. It does, in the past, history has shown we have been able to get a very diverse mix of board members on the board because of the long, narrow district that we've had. We've had members that lived in Mill Creek. We've had members that have lived up in Everett. We have members who have lived in Snohomish County. We've had members with our last Jam Yang who lived down near Woodside Elementary. So all the way in the southern part outside of Mill Creek lived there. And we've had board members who have well represented each one of our regions well. So I don't believe, this is recent, I can't go back beyond before I was on the board, but we've had a mix. So I'm still of the where I would prefer the 6 year term to stay in force. So at this point in time, is there any feelings as to the direction the board would like to go in? Remember now that, yes, student rep, you want to speak?
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a reason why I was not offered a.
Yeah, that's an excellent
Most
point.
definitely.
Okay.
That
I
was a
wasn't sure if
complete
it was
mistake.
because
It
there
was a mistake.
if there was a procedure that this was just a elected director discussion or not.
No.
Yeah, I just wanted to, some of the things that I was hearing as a student, I think this is obviously something, maybe a perspective that changes with adulthood. But since we serve students, I think it's a valuable perspective. The idea that 4 years is a very short amount of time is not one that I can really agree with. And I would urge you guys to think about the students that you're serving and how much changes in a student's life in 6 years. 6 years ago, I was 12 years old. I was like basically a kid. I have a little brother who's 11 now. And so it's like thinking about like myself being his age. And that's essentially primarily who you guys are serving in these terms. And so the idea that consistency is important for those students is absolutely true, but I don't really see how decreasing the amount of democratic participation in this elected body is something that is going to necessarily decrease consistency. Consistency is absolutely important, but if the electors of our school district, if the voters don't want to see the direction to continue to necessarily go in the direction that it's going, or if they don't see that the consistency that they're seeing in the current elected officials is the direction that they want, that's just a facet of our democracy. And so I would never see it as a bad thing to increase the frequency with people, that people can exercise their civic duties. So, my opinion.
Thank you very much. So is there a direction that we?
Can we say more comments, or do we
30
just?
seconds, unless we want to extend more.
Like Fight Club rules.
Yeah, I don't, the timing thing, this is supposed to be a board discussion. It's a little too structured for me.
Yeah, I did
have to say.
Okay.
Just talk.
So what do we?
Bend the rules.
Yeah, no, we wanted,
We want to make sure that this particular item doesn't extend
I understand that.
hours into the evening.
I understand that, but I think we also just need to have an opportunity to speak freely and have discussion among ourselves.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's Robert's rules, or I don't mean to be stopping the process,
Okay,
but I feel like we just need to
talk.
be able to talk, and we all recognize we don't want to be here for into the evening,
okay.
late into the
but
evening.
I
Is
think,
there someone who would like to make an additional comments?
I just want to clarify though, we're not making a decision
No.
tonight. We're not taking a vote tonight. It is just for us to speak freely and figure out
No.
what our next step is.
No, we can make a decision if we wish to move on,
Forward.
move forward with a resolution and a review of the policies and procedures we have in place. Now, if we decide we want to move on, now those still have to go through their same process. They have to be voted, they have to be reviewed, first reading, second reading, all of that has to take place. Or we can table the discussion with no true resolution to go forward with a resolution and a policy and procedure review.
No, and I do appreciate, the students' words. 4 years, 6 years is a really long time in your life, and as a parent, I can't, 20 years is a long time in my life for my daughter, and it's hard as a parent. And I guess I just struggle because there are open seats on a number of districts, and so it's I do struggle, and then I struggle with the possibility for a whole majority to turn over, which can change things, and so it's I will admit some fear. And I do accept that, and I don't do this so that people can run. I do this so that I can serve the district, and those that want to serve the district are here to serve the students, not just so they can get an elected position. And so I do struggle with that. And so it is just sort of, I appreciate Director Nichols asking, is there a way we can hear from people and about who is, if we put out this offering, how many people do we get that want to step towards a 6-year position where they have to run in 2 years? Just sort of what does that population look like? Because I don't know, because I didn't challenge 6 years, and I re-upped for 6 years twice. So I don't, it's just what I did.
I mean, it sounds like what I'm hearing for those that are wanting to stay with 6 years is that there's a lot of concerns about what ifs. based on other
I don't think
things,
so.
based on other things that are happening either in our state or in the country in general. And not that those aren't valid concerns, but we don't really have any indication that has been happening here. And the fact of the matter is we don't know, because we're not letting people who can't run for 6 years throw their hats in the ring. I mean, I can't remember in recent history up to today, anybody on this board that has a median income, household income less than $80,000. Okay, that's upper middle class for a lot of compared to a lot of people in our district. I'm assuming that most of you here have significantly more than that, right? So we have a different perspective than somebody who is working, minimum wage jobs, or who is working poor, supporting a multi-generation family, something like that. And they probably want to be here, but you can't commit 6 years for $50 a meeting if you need to work all the time to support your family. It's unequal. And not that 4 years is going to fix all those problems. I just think we're doing our community a disservice. And if the board flips, that's what the community wants. That's what the voters want. We're not here to dictate what the voters want.
Director Mason?
So I appreciate all the comments from directors and what I've been hearing. What I'm listening to is we've talked about diversity throughout the district, on the board, and geographically, for maybe luck, we have been a very diverse geographic board across both serving Everett and Mill Creek all the way down to Woodside. In terms of background, I think we're a very diverse board in terms of the different skills and knowledge and education and profession we bring to the discussion. We are ethnically a diverse board. And I think, I'm not sure where the income thing, because I'm not sure 4 or 6 years would impact who runs. But to me, I feel like trying to move to 4 years is solving a problem that doesn't exist. So I guess I'm leaning towards the 6.
Thank you very much. Director Berg?
So just a couple of things. So I heard from a lot of parents. I had wanted to bring this forward as soon as I came on the board, but because of a variety of reasons, I didn't. And a lot of them had to do with how much respect I have for all of you. And just, I know I've mentioned this in passing, just, hey, this is something, and it never really seemed to be the right time. I think that our board has operated with an incredible amount of privilege and an incredible amount of luck, to be frank, to get to this geographic diversity that we have. And again, to Andrew's point about the income issues. And I think that does speak to who comes for positions, because as our student representative so adequately stated, people think about schools in 4-year chunks, and it's hard to make commitments outside of those 4-year chunks. I talk to a lot of parents who say, we're going to move, but it's after, my child finishes middle school. It's after, we're about to change from elementary to middle. That'll be a good transition point. And those transition points tend to be in kind of 4-year chunks. And the other thing, and this is just my question, because it is very difficult, I think, for a lot of families to look at positions like this. And I know that it doesn't seem like people are clamoring to have these, but people do want to say in what happens in their child's education. They do want to be here serving. We don't get paid, right? A per diem is not a paycheck. We are not district employees. We don't get paid for these jobs. And that's neither here nor there. I just want to state it because I don't want anybody to misunderstand what we're talking about. We get, when we claim it, per diem, right? So when I was on other boards, I did claim it. On this board, I do not. So it's very financially burdensome, in addition to the hour of the meetings, and in addition to a variety of other things. And that's why, for me, not tackling the world of institutional and systemic things that I think we could fix to make more people look at this as a good fit. The one area it felt like we had kind of gotten to in August of saying, here's a way that we can give back to community, was this 4 years. And so for me to have, some of the earliest meeting times in the district, to ask families to travel for great distances from our south end to here in this building to meet, to say that you don't have to necessarily live in a certain community to represent your certain area, to be district fluid, and then to say yes and give us 6 years, it just feels like too much. And so I'm just asking respectfully, Madam President, that we move forward with asking staff to draft a resolution to move us to 4-year terms.
Was a House bill that would increase school board
There was.
pay that died this last session, which I found very interesting. So I'm looking to you to help advocate on our behalf for going forward.
We'll do that much better with one hat.
I truly understand that we don't get paid for the time that we put in. We don't get paid for the times that we visit individual schools. Because we may, for some, if it's a school function that we were invited to, but for all of the other times that we visit schools, we don't. One thing I can say, that there are a lot of parents out there that are working so very hard to send their kids to school, that there will always be some who don't have the opportunity to come up here and say, I want to represent the district, because they may not have the desire, they may not have the time, or they're just so stressed with raising their own individual kids. One thing that we as board members have the opportunity is to go within the community, to listen to the parents, to hear what they have to say about how the district is affecting their lives and their students. We had the opportunity of going down to Woodside one evening, which I truly was very happy about an issue down there. So we as the board took the board down to the district, to the school, so we could sit in and hear what the community has to say. When I go down to a different school for cultural night, I sit at tables where I get to listen to what the parents have to say, so that I can bring that back to the board, so that their words and their ideas and their concerns are shared amongst here. Or I could bring it back to our superintendent and the administration staff, so that when there is a problem, hopefully that problem will get resolved. But we will always have the opportunity, and we should always take the opportunity to go out into the community. And I think that can be achieved very much so with whatever term we have, if it were 2 years, if it were 4 years, if it were 6-year terms, because that is what being a representative is all about. We go and we listen to our community and we bring it back. I would not say it's been lucky that we have had the opportunity to have a very diverse district and well represented by every region within our district. I think it was meant to be, because board members took the time to look for people out there who wanted to represent their community well. And I think we do a very good job at representing. I may not always go down to Jackson, but I do have someone who has had the opportunity to go to Jackson. I may not have the time to go to Everett, but I do go to Everett every now and then, especially maybe to play the piano for them if I had to, or attend some of their events there. We may not all have the opportunity to go to Cascade, but I take that opportunity because maybe I had children there at Cascade. But because we are first off parents and we have kids, we have a greater opportunity of getting the voice of our constituents and bringing that voice back. And I think we do a very good job with 6-year term, because we have the time to learn the beat and the culture of our communities, so that we can bring it back. I've not heard from my community that they're concerned with a 4-year term. They're concerned with, when they stop me in the grocery store, will I listen to them and take their concern back to the district? When they see me in the bank and they stop me and we end up spending over 45 minutes talking about something going on in the district, they're concerned, will I take action for them? That's what I hear from my community.
And can I say just a big thank you to our community, that during the past 2 years, we've had I think 2, and I could be wrong by 1 or 2, people come and speak to us about masks. One because we were requiring them, and one because we stopped requiring them. We have not had any protest about any of the other political things that are going on around the country, which I think, very thankful that I live in this community and that I serve this community. So the fact that maybe one of my points about changing of a majority, which happened up in Marysville, which is changing some of their policies, in our community might not happen. But again, we just started our strategic plan, and if we were to have a flip, this is an election year, but if it had been last November, if we had had a majority flip, then our strategic plan could change. And yes, it's an unknown, but I think it's also an unknown about so many things that even if we move to 4 years, there's lots of unknowns. And so it is just sort of I haven't heard anybody say, actually, I will correct myself. I had one person tell me the 6-year term was too long when we were looking for a position years ago. So I can't say I have never had anybody tell me, but that was just one person that said, I'd like to, but it's 6 years. But I did talk to somebody else this week who asked me about the term. And I did say, well, it's 2 years and another 6. And it's like, and he works in the Everett area and lives in the Everett area, and just sort of was like, yeah, I mean, it's looking at his kids in school, and was just like, yeah, he's going to consider it. And so it is just sort of, but I was, straight up, it's 2 years and then 6 years. And I don't know if he'll apply or not, but and again, just, 5 districts in the area that have, 4 districts that have 5 unopposed positions. So it's just sort of, it's not, the people there's not people walking towards these positions, running.
I don't think that Everett School District has ever had any, at least within the last, 10 years, has had any unfilled seats or uncontested runoffs. So that's not really an issue up here. But I don't think that what you were saying, President Lassane, actually, what I got out from it, I don't think what you meant. So what I got out from it was the people that I talk to every day in the area that I live, which is a very different socioeconomic area than, say, where I live in North Everett. They're concerned about these different things. Well, when I talk to people who live where I live and who go to school in the areas that my kids go to daycare in, when I tell them, they ask how long is a term, and I say it's 6 years. Like, God, I could never do that. Why not? That's just too much time. I don't know where I'll be in 6 years. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm curious to know if your grocery store is the Fred Meyer off of Casino Road, or the Safeway off of Broadway in North Everett. Like, have you talked to people there? It's a very different conversation. Yes. Than talking to somebody in South Everett. Okay. Which is why income in this instance matters. It dictates when you're stressed, when you are financially stressed, or whatever that may be, it limits your long-term planning, right? So somebody who wants to get involved, who lives in a different socioeconomic cultural area than most of us do, that may be a barrier for them. And what I got from what you were saying, and I don't think this is what you meant, was those systemic barriers don't matter because we can always go out and talk to those people in the community. But when's the last time any of you have spent any time in the poorer parts of Everett to talk to people, to go grocery shopping, to go to the bank, things like that? Whereas somebody else who may not be able to commit to 6 years is able to run for 4 and make that sacrifice in their personal life, that does live in those areas. So I think, if nothing else, we should move forward with drafting a resolution just so that all of us on this board can stand on and actually vote and have our vote on record what we want, whether it's a 4-year term or a 6-year term. I think at the very least we owe that to our voters, and it gives voters time to give us feedback, to inform our decisions going forward.
I'd like to comment if I may. I find myself many times in different parts of Everett and grocery shopping, and it's amazing. I don't, know a lot of people in a lot of neighborhoods, but it's amazing how I get stopped in the QFC on Everett Avenue, in downtown Everett, and somebody says, "Pam, I know you," and will stop and talk me. The last time I stopped in Safeway on 75th up on Evergreen Way, for 45 minutes, I stopped and talked with a parent who wanted to volunteer here in Everett. And they said, "You're Pam." And I said, "Yes, I am." And so they stopped me and talked to me. I normally don't shop in Everett because I usually go up to Smoky Point and shop at the commissary up there. But I do get stopped in Costco, and I get stopped there. I get stopped at the Bartels also in my neighborhood on 112th, and I talk with parents. And it's amazing because sometimes I go in there and they says, "Oh, are you having office hours today?" I say, "No, I'm just stopped for something." Because one of the clerks noticed I'm always stopping and talking with people. And it could be just because that's who I am. But I look at it, I managed to go down to Mill Creek, and I get stopped there. So people do know who I am, and people will stop and ask me questions. I got stopped from a person there at Fred Meyer's on Casino Road because they know who I am. So I may not be in that area.
They can still shop there.
One of our schools is.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure it's in our district.
No, it's right
Yeah.
with Muncleton,
It's across
right
the street.
there.
It's mine, but it's on Casino Road, and we have some schools over there, Cascade High School. And I run sometimes you run into the supermarket there and you stop. And it's amazing how every time I go into a grocery store, I get stopped. But we all do,
Yeah.
because they know us. They know us. And I do understand what you're saying, because we may not always live in your neighborhood. But if you've been in this community long enough, you will get stopped when people know who you are.
I don't know if it's necessarily the neighborhood you live in or the neighborhood you grew up in,
That could be.
because I grew up in this neighborhood.
But what I'm trying to say is, I understand what you're saying about socioeconomic areas. I understand that. I really do. I attend church up in the North Everett part neighborhood, and we have a lot of members who live in that neighborhood, and so they know who you are, so they talk to you. Yes, I do understand that.
I know we don't want to make this really a debate, but discussion, but I would have loved this past election to have a real opponent, and 6 years ago to have a real opponent. I had a 19-year-old opponent 6 years ago, and then a guy who didn't even run a campaign this year. So yes, I was opposed, but I really would have loved somebody that I could have actually,
So vote for a 4-year term.
So can I, sorry, I just want to jump in, just to offer a little perspective, because I think, and I think it's valid, and I think it's hard when we talk about positions like this, but truly there is such an advantage to being an incumbent, and there is such, you put yourself, by being a candidate, you open yourself up mental health wise in ways that are horrific. And I can say that being on the ballot numerous times, and it is a mental health challenge every time I sign that candidate form. And I just want to be real. So when people aren't running against us as school board directors and we don't have real opponents or people, it's not necessarily because folks don't want it, but it's because they just see their different barriers. And what I'm proposing tonight is removing one of those barriers. But I also want to just talk to board cohesion, because I've had the privilege of serving on a board with 4-year terms, and there is cohesiveness. There is a ramp up. There are policies and procedures. I can tell you from this cabinet that we have here, they're amazing. They're diligent, they're detailed, and I know they could ramp up. I could, fight, do a jet fighter with some of the training I got here, right? Like, I mean, it's just amazing. They get you trained up and ready to go. And so I think for all those other districts that have those 4-year terms, they're doing that same thing, that same grind of getting folks up to ready to perform their duties. But it's really hard because democracy is so important. And if, we have a strategic plan, it's not our plan, it's the plan for our community. And if our community says, we don't want you in these positions, and we want a different plan, then that's, it might be heartbreaking to us because we spent so much time, but it's their right as voters to do that. It just is, because it's not ours. There's nothing about any of this that's ours. We serve at the pleasure of the people. And when I look at parents who have said, we'd love to have that input, we feel like we're being weighted out by the next time I can meaningfully do something, my kid's gonna go from being in kindergarten to 6th grade, and then from 6th grade to out. And even I know they're wrong in their perception of thinking that we wait them out, quote unquote, when they have issues, but they're not wrong with the math. And there's not a way for them to have meaningful input into who's representing them, and they get frustrated and disenfranchised, and frankly, they just kind of remove themselves and say, look, heads down, grind it out, kid's gonna graduate in 12 years. And that's that. So I would love to move forward with, again, at least that resolution. Folks can get on the record with what they want, hear back from community, and make it potentially that process democratic to move to a further democratic process.
Although I'd just like to remind our board as well that our community encompasses a lot more voters than parents. And as a matter of fact, parents are actually a fairly small portion when you look statistically of who votes a school director in. And it's unfortunate that they don't have a stronger say when we do hold elections. But, I just, I'm struggling with some of your concepts because you are an individual who is held to elected terms, which means that someone else didn't have an opportunity to join the board when you chose to take another term. So, the discussion about accessibility and being able to have representation and people choose that, I'm having a hard time understanding that the 6-year term doesn't provide for that, given our resignations.
Curious too about the parents that have issue with us. I mean, we do get some comments, but I've never had a conversation where somebody has said, you guys need to leave, or you guys we don't have people clamoring at us to do something. And as a kindergarten parent, I was volunteering in PTA. School board, doing that kind of time was nowhere in my what I wanted to do for my family. But and it had nothing to do with 6-year terms because I didn't know anything about it then. But it is sort of the I just wonder what they're concerned about, that they think being up here could change. That what I think we've all found is we really don't have a whole lot of control up here about changing a whole lot sometimes, because of all the laws and regulations and plans. And I'm saying we do have a lot of control. I'm not saying that lightly. I said it, I don't mean it lightly. But I just wonder about, I agree with but it is, as a parent, I'm up here, we all happen to be parents. And Andrew came towards this as somebody who was going to be a parent, but going to be a future parent of students. And it is just sort of, community members came up against me that weren't parents, but I just don't know if everybody, does or doesn't do it for 6-year terms. I really don't know that fact as a fact.
At this particular point in time, is there somebody who would like to make a motion to move forward with developing a resolution, reviewing our policies and procedures, and then going through that particular process?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we move forward with a resolution, which will still have to go through the same processes and review our policies and procedures. Are there any more further discussion on that topic? All those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying, yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed of the motion, please respond by saying oppose.
Oppose.
Opposed?
Oppose. At this particular point in time, the motion does not carry. So we will continue on the discussion further in the future if it comes up again. Thank you very much.
Take a 5-minute break.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, 5 minutes, please. Secretary, set the timer.
I'd like to consider the district thing too. I mean, we've been lucky, but.
Art has representatives in the.
Oh, I'm talking about state level. 2 years. That's ridiculous. It's all you do.
Thank you for that.
We'll now move to section 13.0, excuse me, which is unfinished business. There is no unfinished business scheduled for this meeting tonight. Moving to section 14.0, which is new business. The first item on the schedule is approval of student representative board member. I understand Miss Danny Mundell will be at the podium to speak on that. No? Yes.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Caroline Mason and Dr. Lancaster, Principal Jennings, and Miyoke McGuire from the Everett PTSA Council for being a part of the panel for interviews that we held for 3 outstanding candidates from Everett High School. It's my pleasure to introduce Alice Gilbertson as a student board representative beginning the year of 22-23 school year. Alice, if you want to come forward while I say a few kind words. Alice is the treasurer for Authors Anonymous, an after-school writing club at Everett High. Over the summer, she's hoping to volunteer at an animal shelter because she loves animals and feels this would be a great way to give back to her community. Alice has an open and diverse mindset. She's interested in how the boards are run, the type of discussions and decisions that come up and are made, and how they impact her and her school. Marie Chamley, a project manager at Boeing, said of Alice, her communication skills with all ages, along with her leadership skills, will be an asset to the school board as a whole. Kathy Woolsey, a former elementary teacher and current academic tutor, describes Alice as a kind and caring individual who really has others' needs in mind and is always interested in others. Melissa Carmel, Alice's world history teacher, said of her, Alice has the ability to listen. Really listen, even to things which might be a bit dry or even uninteresting. She sits at the front of the room, and every time she scans for eye contact, she has her attention and she is focused on the task at hand. Alice, would you like to introduce who you brought with you today?
Hi. Today I brought with me my parents, my dad, Dan Gilbertson, my mother, Erin Rohrbach, and my stepdad, Mike McCutcheon. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity and to sit with you board members and get to know all of you and be part of my community more. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Alice. I really appreciate it. The recommended action tonight would be that the Board of Directors approves the selection of Alice Gilbertson of Everett High School as our next student representative. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Director Nichols and seconded by Director Berg. Are there any discussions?
I would like to just say, having sat on the interview panel, what a pleasure it was to meet Alice for the first time and hear a little bit about her background. I think you're going to make an excellent addition to our board. We will certainly miss Tara, but it's great to have a new voice coming on. Probably a little nervous standing at the podium right now, and it might be that way for your first meeting or two, but you'll get the hang of it. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say and share.
Thank you.
And can I offer too, you saw Tara definitely use her agency tonight to say, do I get a voice in this discussion? We do not expect that. That was a real mistake on our part to not include her. We do appreciate any agency you bring with you.
Okay.
So all those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I guess you can't back out now.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll next move to section 14.02, which is K-12 Visual and Performing Arts Adoption. First reading, Dr. Bowden.
Good evening, President Lassane, Board Directors, Dr. Salzman. Our team tonight is very excited to present the first reading of the recommendation for the K-12 Visual Arts Curriculum. I'm Dr. Shelley Bowden, Chief Academic Officer, and this evening I will be joined by Ms. Tammy Kaufman, who is our K-12 Visual and Performing Arts Facilitator, and Ms. Ann Arnold, who is the P5 Instruction and Early Learning Director, just to share our journey on our materials recommendation. Director of K-6-12 Instruction, Mrs. Callie Spear, is unfortunately unable to join us this evening. However, she was an integral part of this process. Let's bring the presentation up. I feel like all my Zoom skills are so rusty nowadays. So we like to start with, as we start with much of our work, we always start with our why. And that's really anchored in our strategic plan. The K-12 Visual Arts Adoption addresses the strategic priorities of equitable access, consistency and accountability, effective instruction, and community engagement. We'll revisit these connections to the strategic priorities throughout our presentation this evening with the intent that you can see the connections through the strategic plan. Strong instruction always begins with backwards planning and the end in mind, and so we do the same in our adoption processes with the expected student priority outcomes. This adoption focuses on the reduction of gaps for student groups, strengthening student wellness, and ensuring students are prepared for both college and career. In addition, this work also connects two of our initiatives that you can see here, C1A and C1B, which also help us to achieve equitable access to curricular resources across our P12 system. As with other adoptions, we follow the rigorous procedure outlined in Policy 2311 and 2311P to guide our meetings. Our teams created 3 different committees with diverse membership across the district with teacher, parent, and community voice infused throughout the process. To provide you some history, as you can see here, we had a need for a comprehensive arts adoption. The last full adoption was in 2001. We had a more recent adoption in 2019 for an AP Art, which is also aligned with the College Board frameworks. After creating the committees, the team reached out to local districts to determine what resources they were using. It's part of a standard practice that we do. The team actually could not locate any other local school districts who had recently engaged in a K-12 arts adoption. And so we would actually like to thank the board for their investment and support in the arts, as we are so excited to be leading the region in this work. After a needs assessment, we then reached out to publishers to see what existing publications might actually fit our needs as well. Throughout the process, we use the appendices found in 2311P to guide our review process. And within Appendix B, we took a deep dive into the standards, best practice, and 21st century skills. The committee also did quite a bit of research around teaching for artistic behaviors, choice and growth mindset, as well as the creative process. The research then informed the creation of additional criteria in Appendix B and also will guide our implementation training as we move forward with adoption. The important thing to highlight here is that the creative process was really important to our committees. We wanted to ensure that no matter what curricular resources we chose met the needs of the flexibility in the process while being tied to the Washington State Art Standards. After reviewing several resources, our team began field testing in February. All of the instructional materials have digital components, which in the last few years we have found to be really critical to our success for our students. And we are so grateful for those flat panel light box units in classrooms that were on the 2016 levy. So thank you to our board and taxpayers for making those a priority and getting those into our classrooms. You can see in this image here, the teacher on the left was utilizing that flat panel in an interactive manner to engage students in learning through these resources. On a high level, through field testing, we determined that teachers really loved it when students had that flexibility to be more creative through open-ended projects. And as with the last few adoptions, we hosted a virtual open house. This was done in coordination with our amazing communications department, who pushed it out through all social media channels. In addition, we had art teachers send this information directly to parents. We had both parents and community members respond, which was very exciting for us.
Hello, my name is Tammy Kaufman. I'm the Visual and Performing Arts Facilitator. We are very excited to let you know that our K-12 arts adoption recommendation is a combination of Art of Education with Flex and Pro parts, as well as Davis art curriculum. We are recommending Art of Education, Flex and Pro for elementary visual arts and high school intro to art. We are recommending Davis art curriculum for middle school visual art, high school drawing and painting, and high school graphic design. What you're going to see is a spiral of arts learning that is standards aligned and supports our specific programs. We intentionally chose this curriculum because it is flexible, concrete, and supports our teachers and students. Our teams recommend Flex for elementary visual art and for intro to art in high school. Flex provides open-ended topics, themes, essential questions to help students build creativity, explore different media, and make connections. It has beginning and intermediate and advanced levels and includes diverse artists and artwork. Here you see a ceramics unit from Flex. We did some informal field testing in our ceramics course and feedback was positive. You can see how the unit goes together. Each unit includes clear lesson objectives and teaching strategies, art vocabulary, time and materials, the art process, the steps it takes to make that artwork, artists and artwork, and also includes an assessment. Pro provides professional development for art teachers, elementary through high school. It includes hands-on videos for teachers to learn different media and art techniques, and it supports ways for teachers to integrate art, social emotional learning, choice, and STEAM. Next, we have Davis curriculum for middle school visual arts, high school drawing and painting, and high school graphic design. Here you can see each specific high-quality Davis curriculum. We have print and digital access for students and teachers with all Davis curriculum. Davis curriculum experience and explorations for middle school. Middle school students will have access on district-provided Chromebooks. This supports the creative process, creativity, and choice in art, and includes diverse visual image bank of artists and artwork. Next, we see the Davis curriculum, the visual experience for drawing and painting. Teachers feel this curriculum provides a concrete pathway for students to learn specific skills while also supporting engaging studio experiences that are process-focused. This also teaches vocabulary, elements of art, and principles of design. It focuses on technical skills so students can develop highly refined works of art. We are recommending communicating through graphic design for our graphic design courses. This curriculum connects to art careers and CTE. It has engaging and inspiring projects that help students build their own creative ideas and develop a portfolio of work. It works well with technology, including Adobe and Photoshop, and it will help build a CTE framework to have a well-rounded and aligned graphic arts program throughout our district.
Good evening. I'm Ann Arnold. I'm the Director of P5 Instruction and Early Learning Programs, and I'm delighted to be here tonight. I'm going to review the adoption schedule and the costs. The recommended curricular materials that Tammy just described have a total cost of $270,000. Our schedule for the adoption, which is shown here, was disrupted due to the pandemic, but despite all that, it's been completed in a timely manner, with both the 9th through 12th grade visual arts and the K through 8 adoption being finalized this year. It's one thing to adopt great materials, but we all know that without implementation supports, coaching, and professional learning around those materials, we wouldn't have the outcome that we want. So our implementation plan for the arts curriculum has multiple phases. This summer, to begin with, we will have initial use training, which will be led by the publishers, focusing on the digital platform usage and an introduction to all of the materials that have been just described. Additionally, teacher teams will come together, led by Tammy, to develop instructional maps, common assessments, and work with our preschool teams. Though not part of the adoption, we know the importance of vertical alignment, so we will be helping them develop lessons and materials to bridge our students into kindergarten in a successful way around art. During the school year, we will provide job-embedded professional learning to support implementation for elementary, middle school, and the high school programs. And as we move forward to sustain the program and continue to build students' experience around art, there are plans to restart and expand the art docent program since it was stalled during the pandemic due to a lack of access to schools and classrooms. And we'll continue to develop the amazing partnership we've had with the Shacks Art Center, creating strong supports for all of our students. In addition to the support that we got from the Shack Arts Center during the adoption process as part of the community engagement, we're partnering in other ways as well. For example, Shack provided free art kits to all students this spring at Madison and Lowell Elementary Schools through a Sparks grant. Then they sponsored the Art and Friendship Clubs also this spring with Garfield, Hawthorne, and Madison Elementary Schools. And they offered teacher art training for some Everett school teachers with integration of STEM and art, creating the STEAM acronym that we think about when we commit to STEM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, along with the cultural storytelling that's been a part of all this work this spring. Next year, we're looking forward to the Shack partnering with us to sponsor an art docent fair to help restart this program, as I referred to earlier. And we will start the new art curriculum in the docent program. So it won't just be random, whatever the artist's passion is. It will be directly connected to the curriculum that we've just adopted, really creating an aligned and consistent program for all of our students. As we come to the end of the presentation, I want to come back to where this work all started, with our priority student outcomes. Our excitement about this art adoption is, of course, driven by the opportunities provided for students to create, expand, and develop their talents and passions. But there's also a broader outcome of this work, which is really important to us. The Brookings quote right here that talks about the increase in arts education has a remarkable impact on students' academic, social, and emotional outcomes. And I think we heard that earlier today when we listened to the outstanding music that was performed. Art is integral to student development and to success. And we have a great opportunity right now to include it in the student lives in Everett Public Schools. So in addition to those really important priority student outcomes that Dr. Boughton mentioned, reducing gaps in achievement among student groups, ensuring students are prepared to succeed in college and career, and strengthening student wellness, engagement, and safety, we are also promoting academic success with our other three priority student outcomes, which are third grade literacy, science achievement, and math achievement. We really think all of these things contribute to a really outstanding educational experience for all students in Everett Public Schools. So we're really excited to present this adoption to you.
So we've come to the conclusion of our presentation, and as I've shared in the beginning, one of our strategic priorities that we highlighted was that of equitable access. While our secondary schools all have art teachers, we know that not every elementary school has an art specialist. For the 22-23 school year, 12 of our 18 schools have a designated art specialist, and specialists are allocated to schools based on the enrollment, and therefore some smaller schools may not have as much staffing to sustain additional positions outside of PE, music, and library. We will continue to support our art docent programs and fostering our strong community partnerships with the Shack Art Center. But that being said, we cannot rely on the generosity of our community partners and volunteers to ensure that all students have access to the arts. Therefore, as we continue to work towards the commitment of equitable access to our arts curriculum, the generalists in schools, second, third, fourth grade teachers, without art specialists will have access to these curricular resources so that all students may participate in skill-based and standards-aligned art instruction as we continue to grow our elementary art programs across our district. I would also like to take a minute before I conclude to remind the board and the public that our middle school art show reception is this Thursday here at 6 p.m. If you're unable to attend and you're here this evening, as you leave the boardrooms, I might suggest that you take a quick gallery walk to see our outstanding young artists showcased in our hallways here at the Community Resource Center. Again, we'd like to take a moment to just thank the board for its dedication to the arts in schools, and we'd like to open this opportunity up for any questions.
Directors, do we have any questions?
I guess I just have a question about, first off, shameful but very appropriate plug for the art, because I did see some of it. I saw some glass work I'd like to take a closer look at. But again, how things change, that Penny Creek, having historically been one of the largest schools, but I don't think it stands to still be one of the largest schools, when my daughter was there, did not have an art teacher. So I remember approving math facilitators, literary facilitators, other staff into buildings. I do not recall approving art teachers into buildings as specialists. So what has been the path to getting the 12 that we have right now? Just as a reminder.
So often, buildings are given allocations for specialists at the elementary, and those specialists provide planning time for the generalist teachers. So a second grade teacher has a planning time, either 36 minutes 5 times a week or 45 minutes 4 times a week, where they take their children to library, music, PE, or sometimes art, and that is provided their planning time. Those allocations are provided out of basic ed, so typically speaking, principal may designate someone in their building to teach art. They may actually solicit through a personnel action form and hire an art teacher if there is a vacancy. So I know I came to this district in 2005. There were very few elementary art teachers, and I'm excited to say that next year we'll have at least 12 schools with art specialists. I believe that principals are continuing to look at how to grow those art specialists, but it isn't, sometimes it's not a specific, I'm going to hire an art teacher from outside of the district. A lot of times it may be a teacher who might transfer into that position, who has a passion or an endorsement in that. So it may not necessarily be seen on a personnel action or personnel form for the board.
And or wasn't on one of the strategic plans that we get when we're making our budget decisions, but it really is a business decision, a building decision is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
And then we allocate that staff based on the students in the building.
The student enrollment, yes.
Okay, so is there opportunity for, because since art is basic education, I know the state doesn't pay us everything that we need and it's all kinds of messed up, but relying on volunteers, like you said, for those other elementary schools, and yes, teachers still get the same planning time, but then the students don't have the same access, and then a teacher has to take it out of their class day when they could be doing planning time, or they could have that specialist that actually is focused on that. I'm just wondering about the equity choices there.
I would like to piggyback on that too, because that was my question. Thank you very much.
It's convoluted.
But what would it take to ensure that those remaining 6 schools would get the same kind of equitable opportunities that the 12 did?
So in some case situations, it may mean additional basic ed staffing over allocation to increase that specialist time, so that if a building only generated 3 FTE of staffing for specialists, we may need to increase that. And that's at a cost because that may be unfunded. There are other opportunities as well. As schools ebb and flow with their growth and enrollment, there may be opportunities to hire half-time people or share art specialists that may defer the cost. So what we're looking at right now is trying to optimize the accessibility to the curriculum that we're planning to adopt, and that may be having those generalists teach it for now while we strategize about how we can help provide schools that don't currently have art specialists other opportunities. It may be that we consider modifying our existing specialists. So you may have a full-time PE, full-time music. Maybe that might mean allocating a third of that FTE of each of those to have them teach art. that may not necessarily always be preferable, but I think that there are some options that we can take to the tables. And I think I trust our building leadership to really think about strategy about how they can best serve the students and meet the needs of the constituents in their schools. So
we're looking towards equitable outcomes for all of our students.
That's right.
Correct?
That's correct.
I know we're here about the curriculum, and so that's why I sort of looked at it, because I'm a very much non-artist. Like I can draw a straight line, but I was looking at some of that elementary school stuff. So thank you for the pictures, because I thought I could maybe do that. So I would like to come to an elementary school art class. But no questions about the curriculum, because I think to be first out there, the fact that it's basic ed, that it's a priority to us, both the music and the visual arts, and that I could see myself learning, I think it's outstanding.
I had a quick question. First, a statement. I was surprised to read that Washington State formally adopted art standards in 2017. I would have thought we would have had something like that before, but to your point earlier, not a lot of districts are, and I'm assuming they're just standards there for teachers to understand what art looks like at each grade level, or what is capable, or.
Yep, standards and skills. So helping to teach students specific skills and standards as they grow and mature and progress through the system. So we've had a significant, most secondary schools, I would say, have a robust art program. And so those standards, it is kind of recent, but they have, specific skill sets in different areas and the different media and things like that.
Okay, two questions. One, in both middle school and high school, you choose art as an elective, correct?
That's correct.
And so, and I was trying to look up our graduation requirements. There is no art requirement in the graduate.
There's fine arts requirements, and there might be a colleague in the staff might be able to help me with this one, but there are fine arts requirements for graduation.
Okay, but in middle school, it's by choice.
It is elective in middle school.
Okay.
The fine arts can also include music.
Okay.
In high school, so it's either one.
Yeah.
Yes, so thank you. The graduation requirement for high school fine and performing arts, so it can be music, it can be drama, it can be visual arts, is, as all graduation requirements, a little complicated. It starts out saying that it's 2 years. One of those 2 years can be replaced by a personalized pathway if their pathway is maybe a CTE and they're going to Snow Isle or something else. But so at least 1 year and potentially 2 years of fine and performing arts, visual arts being one of those pathways.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification. And then lastly, can you just help me understand what a school that has an art docent program looks like? I guess I don't fully understand that.
Certainly. We actually have several art docent programs in our district. I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like we have 8 art docent programs, and essentially there is usually a volunteer coordinator who helps to develop the training for those art docents, so people who are interested in pushing into a classroom and teaching a specific art lesson. And so earlier, Director Ann Arnold mentioned that we would be allowing art docents to have access to this curriculum, so that typically speaking, there's a separate docent curricula, or sometimes a docent might just say, I really love Picasso, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to teach this lesson on Picasso. And so it's great for those students, but it may not necessarily be aligned to the standards or aligned to a specific skill, or even allow for that creative product at the end, right? It might be a very set activity. So our art docents can be trained by a volunteer, typically in the elementary school, and those adults might push into a classroom. There might be a sign up that they say, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this second grade art lesson, and they go in once a week or maybe every other week to support classrooms in learning the arts. So there is some level of structure. Some of our community partnerships with the Shack Art Center has done some really great mentoring with our art programs and pushing in, but it is a volunteer. There's tends to be a curriculum. We like our students to have an aligned and coordinated curriculum so that we can have some equitable access. The board has been really clear now and in the past that it does not matter what end or where you live in this district, we want you to have equitable access to our content and curriculum. So the art docent program could potentially utilize this material so that we could, even while we're building our art programs at the elementary, an art docent could utilize this curriculum so that students could have access to those same activities, skills, and standards.
Thank you.
I have one last question. When you start talking about the 6 schools that will not have the art docent program, and you want equitable outcomes throughout the district, are any of those 6 schools all in the same region within our district?
You're referring to the 6 schools that do not have art specialists, correct?
Art specialists.
Yes, they are not. We have 3 schools in Region 2, and we have 3 schools in Region 1. So it's equitably distributed, but it's not quite what we're going for. What we'd really like to do is ensure that all students have that access.
It would be wonderful if we can figure out how and what kind of resources are necessary in order to ensure that all 18 schools have equitable outcomes opportunities.
Absolutely, and I have a lot of faith in my team, a lot of faith in my staff, and a lot of faith in our building leaders to help us accomplish that goal soon. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? We shall move on to section 14.0. Mr. Fleckenstein, policy 3111, entrance qualifications, proposed revision, first reading.
Thank you. The proposed revisions are to comply with changes to the total instructional hour requirements for a kindergarten program as defined in WAC 180.16.200 as having an annual minimum of 1,000 hours. In addition, a cross-reference to policy 2100, educational opportunities for students with a parent legal guardian in the military have been added to the policy to help guide staff on how to provide a continuity of education to students of military families that move into our district's boundaries at any time during the school year. Revisions to policy 3111, entrance qualifications, have been reviewed by legal counsel, the policy review council, and the superintendent's executive cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
We'll move by general consent to forward this on to second reading. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Fleckenstein.
Thank you.
We'll now move to section 15.0, which is upcoming agenda items. Dr. Saltzman, what's planned for our upcoming agenda items and meetings?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public. At the June 9th special meeting, the board will conduct the Everett Public Schools Retiree Recognition Event. At the June 14th regular meeting, the board will contain the following: recruitment and retention presentation, P12 visual performing arts adoption, the second reading, April financial report, and the state auditor report.
Very well. We'll move to section 16.0.
Madam President?
Yes.
May, okay, thanks.
We'll move to section 16.0, which is executive closed sessions. There are no meetings scheduled for this evening's agenda.
May I have point of privilege when you're done? May I have point of privilege when you're done?
Yes.
In order.
We have 2 points of privileges asked for this evening. And the first one, Dr. Saltzman, I will yield to Director Berg.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to all my colleagues on the board and our amazing student representative. Tonight's my last board meeting, and so I asked President Lissons for a point of personal privilege, just so I could thank everyone here, everyone watching at home, my family, for allowing me to serve the community in this way. I didn't want to do this during board comments because I'm probably going to cry, because I really do love everyone here. The work you do is truly world class. And I don't say that lightly. Every member of cabinet, I could write a 2-page letter about how professional you are, how much you care for kids. and how much I've learned from all of you. I've tried to be thorough and thoughtful in my time.
No, I
I know, I
terrible
have
tissue. We need tissues.
We do need tissues, sorry. I'm just like totally
Get
sappy.
your tissues, hold on.
And I think I'm crying because I really don't want to go. I wish I could do both for longer. I just wish I could. So that said, this will be my last night here. I'll still be focusing on student success. Jeez, I didn't get this long. And I'll still be a parent in the district. I'm proud to have served with everybody on this dais through COVID, through a broken back, through ridiculous challenges politically in our environment and our country. And everybody here did an amazing job through it all. And I know we've all taken a lot of arrows. I just want to say I'm really proud of the discussion that we had tonight. And I'm proud that we were able to have that discussion because we haven't really been able to talk in front of the public. I don't think the public gets how much we care for each other, how real we keep it, how when we do get letters and emails and phone calls that we do talk about it, not, in big groups, but, we know what's going on. We attend the conferences for professional development so that we can do better for more people. The Everett School District is really lucky to have these 4 people to keep doing the work. And I'm just really sad tonight that I can't continue doing it with you. So with that, I'm just going to say I'm happy that I can still be a parent and be a recipient of all the work that you've done. And I will still be accessible to you as your state representative. And I'll continue to be student success focused as I continue this journey of public service. But I can't thank you all enough for everything you've done for me and my family.
I want to thank you, Director Berg. Please let's show Director Berg by hand clap, please. It's been a privilege to have you on our board. You have definitely been for students. You've shown your perspective that you value this position, you value their lives so much so. And we want to thank you. We really do. We really thank you for your time on our board. Thank you. Any other directors would like to comment?
Thank you.
Brought a great perspective.
We'll continue to, I guess you would say, browbeat you as a representative. When we visit Olympia, we'll be there and we'll browbeat you.
And I don't lose you because I do live in the 44th.
So you haven't lost us yet. Please believe that. Point of privilege, Dr. Saltzman.
Thank you. Well, April, you beat me to the punch again. But I want to thank you publicly because I enjoyed our Thursdays 5 o'clock check-in. Do you remember? That was our set time, 5 o'clock. We made it work. But every time we spoke, you spoke about kids. You spoke about kids and your authenticity and being real really means a lot to me in this board. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just want to say to the public this evening, because we live in transparency and we are real. As we enter down here tonight, the entire cabinet's here, so we haven't got our message out about what happened in Texas. We're getting it out tonight. Everybody in my cabinet is here, so we're a little delayed getting it out into our webpage and to our principals and teachers, because as we walk down, we got the facts of what happened. So if you'll say, why haven't we put anything out yet? Because we're all here right now. So we will get something out this evening. And I just want to say, you heard from the Everett students tonight, McKenna Lim, an outstanding presentation on trainers, and we are working diligently to get this done. And then in closing, This is what it's all about. When a board can have discussion and kids can come and talk about things, this is why we do the work every day. And you don't get to really publicize that or talk about that to everybody, but you got to see it tonight. It's a great board. They worked well together, and you had student voice tonight. And Terry, I know you think you're getting off the hook, but I'm gonna, we meet again, and I want to say to the board, I even called you during your job many times to have our one-on-ones. So thank you for partaking tonight, and your voice means a lot. I wish everybody in this community safe travels, and to our parents and our students, this school system will continue to be safe. We are diligent. Jeff Ponte and his team is outstanding. Our school resources are outstanding. And tomorrow morning, we'll open schools. We'll angst what happened in Texas, but there will be safety in this district. God bless you and be safe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salzman. Can't say enough about safety. Thank you. This concludes the business scheduled to come before the Board of Directors during this meeting. This meeting now is adjourned.